Sacha, I see you shaking your head. You'll get your chance. I see Houston, no Herrera beginning of the season. Taylor, shush, I see your mouth ready to talk. Be quiet.
Brad, let me take this segment for you and show you what an underdog is. I want to see them sign Antoine Griezmann.
He's building content.
I got nothing for you. I got nothing for you.
Ain't you got to be out of it? Ain't you got to be out of it?
Hello and welcome to This is MLS, a brand new show, and I am your host, Jillian Sakovits, and we'll be with you every single week, talking to the people that know this league inside and out. And kicking things off today, we have quite the roster. Joining me in studio, Bradley Wright-Phillips. Cheers, my friend. A+ for showing up today.
Some of us actually show up for work, Jill.
The two people that are joining us from the comforts of their own hotel rooms / homes are Sacha Kljestan and Taylor Twellman. Sacha showing off that nice home set.
That took me all weekend to put this thing together. My back hurts, but I'm excited to be here every week talking MLS with you guys.
No. This isn't Lionel Messi or Luis Suarez's room. Sorry, guys. No. This is the hotel room for MLS season pass on Apple TV. They're down the street. I'll get you later. Sorry, guys. Sorry
and
about
our road warrior, Taylor Twellman, joining us from sunny Florida on the call this week for Inter Miami. So we will start with you, Taylor, putting in a shift there from your hotel room. Year 29 for Major League Soccer, 29 teams. What's got your attention?
Naturally, anytime the big summer, I would say international competitions come around this summer for the first time ever, the European Championships and Copa America will occur at the exact same time. And the reason why I bring that up is we're coming off a calendar year where 8 franchises spent a franchise record on transfer fees. What does that tell us? What does that tell the fans? What does that tell everybody in Major League Soccer? The owners are ready to spend money. Why do I bring up Copa America? Why do I bring up the European Championships? I think we're going to be seeing some big names after those competitions want to come to Major League Soccer a little bit sooner than they wanted to. We'll get into that later in the show, but I expect a huge summer in Major League Soccer.
Taylor, that's in the summertime, though. What got me excited right now is all the superstars we have in Major League Soccer right now. I'm talking about Messi, Bouanga, Cucho, Mukhtar, Almada, the list goes on and on. These are guys that I tune in every week to see, and I can't wait to see them again this season.
I'm interested to see this Inter Miami team. Obviously, on paper, that's an MLS Cup winning team. But when I look at preseason, I'm left with a little bit of, some questions. I start to doubt defensively. I want to see what they look like this season. The one glimmer of hope they do have is Columbus Crew only won 1 game last preseason, and we saw how that worked out.
It hasn't been all smooth sailing, though, for Inter Miami. 1 win in 7 preseason games that span Texas to China to Saudi Arabia. But you can see them finally kick things off this Wednesday when Inter Miami hosts Real Salt Lake at Chase Stadium. Sunday at the Los Angeles Galaxy as well. So 2 big games ahead for Inter Miami. Taylor, Bradley said it. The Columbus Crew, the reigning champions, they won 1 preseason game last year. So how many trophies should fans be expecting Inter Miami to win this year?
Well, everyone and their mother wants to tell me that they're front runners to win 4 trophies. And I'm on the other side of this. I think it's going to be a real struggle for this team. First and foremost, we talked about initially the summer competitions, Copa America this summer. If Messi and Argentina go to the final, he misses 1/5 of the regular season. So anyone trying to tell me that they're going to be the front runners to win the Supporter Shield, I don't see that. I also then look at what Tata Martino said in his press conference about 5 days ago. What is the most important competition and the one you want to win right now? And he said, what? CONCACAF Champions Cup. That tells me one thing, that they are ready to come out of the door, very similar to the way they did Leagues Cup last year, very quickly try to get things going. But I'm not sure they can rely on Luis Suarez for 12 months. I'm not sure they can rely on this entire roster. This roster, Sacha, is depleted already with injuries with Farias. I personally believe they'll be lucky to win 1 trophy, and I'm having a tough time finding where they're a front runner to win 4 trophies. I really am.
I totally agree, Taylor. A lot of people are going to call us haters, but I think it's tough for Miami to win a trophy this season. And if they win a trophy this season, it's going to be because they need young players to step up. I'm talking about Kremoski, Avalos, David Ruiz, Gomez up front. These players have to play big minutes to carry the load for Busquets in midfield, for Messi up front, for Suarez, who looks like he's still playing on half a leg. It's going to be difficult for this Miami team.
Somebody that knows a thing or two about trophies is Lionel Messi, 8-time Ballon d'Or winner. Is he your front runner, Brad, for MVP?
He's the world's greatest to ever do it. So yes, he has to be up there with his God-given talent. And an advantage for Messi in this, let's just say this MVP race, an advantage for him is, for him to win the MVP, he wouldn't have to do as much as Cucho. He wouldn't have to do as much as Gil. He doesn't have to do as much as those players. I think if Messi gets 30 to 35 goal contributions and somebody had 40, Messi's still going to be the favorite because he'll get the votes. So I think, yes, it's possible that he wins the MVP. He's one of the best players we've ever seen, and he'll be in and around that conversation.
Well, he'll win FIFA Player of the Year just the way he did last year and didn't really do anything. Erling Haaland scored 50-plus goals, and he didn't win that. So naturally, Messi's the favorite to win MVP if you talk to anyone around the game. However, inside Major League Soccer, we talk to all the managers within Major League Soccer. Again, because of the Olympics possibility, Copa America, he might not play 10 games, guys. He might not play 12 games. I don't think he's the favorite, in my opinion, on my chart board. He's not the favorite to win. I think Cucho Hernandez, Diego Rossi, I think Lucha Costa could repeat, Denny Bouanga. I think there's going to be other players that are going to have better statistical years, where I think when the voters come to it, they're going to say they had a better season than Lionel Messi.
But Taylor, that's my
Messi is
point
no
with
doubt
it.
the most. Bradley, he's the most talented player in Major League Soccer, for sure. He's the best player of all time, no doubt. But Taylor mentioned it. There's Copa America. Possibly he goes to the Olympics. It's a lot of games that Messi could be missing in Major League Soccer.
100%. While I agree with that, though, I'm saying if he's in and around the same numbers as a Denny Bouanga, that vote's going to Messi. We have to understand that. We have to.
Oh, that's of course, absolutely. But I'm saying he's not going to have the same numbers.
We already saw people voting for Messi, and he got here halfway through the season.
Exactly.
Last year, it was quite the offseason for Inter Miami. We knew that they were going to be making moves, highlighting the big one, Luis Suarez in Barca legend at Inter Miami, joining his former teammates at Barcelona, Kamal Miller out, Julian Gressel in from reigning champions Columbus, obviously a relationship there with former manager Tata Martino from Atlanta United. Let's talk Luis Suarez, 37 years old. At Inter Miami, we saw what Lionel Messi did. Taylor, does he score 15 goals or more?
Wow, it's a really good one. I mean, I look at my notes right to the right of this camera, and I see that 43 goal contributions last year to be the best player in Brazil's top division. And so that was 26 goals, 17 assists. For me to sit here and say that he's not going to score 15 goals, I could see 15 goals, but how many are penalties when Messi's gone? You know, my question ultimately is Luis Suarez going to be available playing 65, 70 minutes at a high clip for Inter Miami? I don't think he will be. I think Campana's going to end up being the highest goal scoring forward, with Messi probably coming out of the midfield, however you want to classify it. But my point being is I think Campana scores more goals than Luis Suarez, but that doesn't mean that Suarez doesn't end up scoring 15 goals. I just don't know, after what I've seen the preseason, Sacha, if he's got the legs to play in this league, in the heat, in this athletic up and down, less technical league than what he's used to. I just don't know if he's really going to have 12, 13, 14 goals from the run of play. I don't know if I see it.
With the amount of football that gets played in the MLS right now and all the cup competitions, I'll give Luis Suarez 15 all competitions. But going off a preseason, and goal scorers are goal scorers. Going off a preseason, I don't see 15 goals in the league. I don't think Luis Suarez is moving well. The one glimmer of hope I'll give him is he's getting chances. He hasn't taken those chances, but a player of his caliber, a player of his stature, if he does start to hit some form, you're seeing some goals. But 15 in the league, not for me.
He did have 17 for Gremio last year, 4,000 minutes for Luis Suarez. Let's talk a little bit about Inter Miami's opponent on Sunday. David Beckham, owner of Inter Miami, co-owner of Inter Miami, and going up against his former side at the LA Galaxy. This will be your nightcap on Sunday night. And we knew it had to be an offseason to change. Big money on more DPs around guys like Ricky Puig, 2 new designated players in Gabriel Peck, reportedly Joseph Painstill, also on his way from Genk. Sacha Kljestan, let's talk about your former side. How much do these changes during the offseason fix the woes that we saw the LA Galaxy have last year?
Not enough for me, Jillian. It's a good question, but the fixes are not enough. Peck and Paintsill, okay, the Galaxy on the positive side have gone out, spent big money on producing DP wingers. The club needs this, but there's still so many questions at the back. I don't think Greg Vanney knows who's going to start in goal this season, whether that's Jonathan Bond, Mitrovic, or McCarthy, who has come over from LAFC. I don't think he knows, and the season is starting 5 days from now. Center back is still an issue, which has been an issue for this team for the last couple of years. Martin Cáceres and Maya Yoshida, a combined 75 years old, are going to be your two starting center backs. You need an athletic center back, and Jalen Neal is injured right now, and he's been injured for 6 months. And Galaxy has a tough schedule to start the season with rivalry games against San Jose, LAFC, Seattle Sounders, Vancouver, Kansas City. This is a tough start to the season, and Greg Vanney's on the hot seat already.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because I feel like this question's literally been asked every preseason for the last 5 or 6 years of the LA Galaxy. And so the most successful franchise in Major League Soccer history has hit a little bit of a rut because the question is always, well, is this the year? Is this the year? Now, I think this summer is going to be the biggest summer in LA Galaxy history because they are going to have to find big name players to come there and turn this thing around, because I think Sacha Kljestan hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to be a struggle. I think it's going to be a real struggle. I'm not saying I don't love the wingers they've brought in. I do like them. They're dynamic. They've got the ability to run in transition, but that back line looks as shaky as ever. And I think that's been the crux of this issue for a long time in LA. And I think it's going to be difficult sledding early on for the Galaxy.
Hey, and to your point about the wingers they brought in, we know, guys, how long does it take for two new players to settle in? It's not enough for this Galaxy team. I even look at the roster. I was looking at it yesterday, and I'm looking at the forwards. There's no proven goal scorers in there. So imagine Paintsill and Peck do have a great season. There's no one scoring the goals. And then defensively, like Sacha, they're not good enough. They're not good enough. I think this is going to be a tough year for Galaxy. I really do.
LA Galaxy finished with 36 points, just above Inter Miami's 34 at the bottom of the table. Last year, both these sides looking to turn it around in MLS play this year. LA Galaxy, Inter Miami, kicking off on Sunday night, and then on Wednesday, the season begins. Miami taking on RSL. Now it's time to welcome in two more faces that you will be seeing throughout the season. Houston Dynamo and Chicago Fire legend Calen Carr, and the armchair analyst himself, Matt Doyle. Guys, ready to kick this year off?
Let's chop it up. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And still hanging out in the penthouse suite is Taylor Twellman, joining us from Florida. Hello, Taylor. We heard what Taylor said.
Hey,
what
guys.
excites you two for 2024, Calen?
Well, I know Taylor's hanging out at his lovely condo in South Beach, but I think the focus for me is where he finished the season last year, and that's in the state of Ohio. The story for me, the best team throughout the regular season, winning the Supporters Shield with FC Cincinnati, Coach of the Year, MVP with Lucho Acosta, and then where it actually finished, Columbus Crew. I find it fitting that in this new era of MLS, Apple TV, Lionel Messi, that is the OGs, MLS's original team, the first club in the league, Columbus, that wins their third title under Wilfred Nancy.
It's all Ohio, huh? Always has been.
Always.
Always has been. No, it's all the Eastern Conference, actually. I did my first power rankings of the year. 8 of the top 10 teams that I had were from the East. And you could throw in a couple more, like NYCFC. They spent $20 million over the past 2 transfer windows. I'm not even sure they're a top 10 team in the Eastern Conference. That's how loaded it is. I think it's an absolute wood chipper. Comparatively, the West, I think they're kind of keeping the powder dry for the summer. So at least for the first few months, all eyes on the Eastern Seaboard, down in Fort Lauderdale with Taylor, in Ohio with Calen, maybe even in New York a little bit too.
All eyes to start the season will be on the reigning champions, the Columbus Crew, in what was Wilfred Nancy's first season at the helm, and led MLS with 67 goals scored. They were getting goals from everybody and winning their third MLS Cup in franchise history. Calen Carr, you're saying it could be 3 finals appearances in 5 years. Why is Columbus such a clear favorite for you?
Well, I think it starts with the manager, Wilfred Nancy, and he was the biggest acquisition not named Lionel Messi last season, and he proved it in the moments that matter, down through the playoffs. You know, Doyle, throughout the playoffs, There's nothing noble about the pathway there, but this was different. It was that perfect mixture of style and substance, that full realization of it, and we saw it clearly on display against LAFC in the final. The way they were able to pick that team apart. If you sit back against them, they're going to be able to play through you. If you press high, they have the weapons, the speed to get behind. The most goals in MLS last year. I've got an even better year from Cucho this year. I think he's going to be my pick for the Golden Boot, potentially the MVP, but the fact that this all happened ahead of schedule, it's scary to think what a second season at the helm might look like from Wilfried Nancy.
The most intriguing part, Calen, Matt, and Jillian, to my conversations with Wilfried Nancy last year is when I asked him substance or style. And he looked right at me and he said, I'd argue style is substance. And I think when you really look at the way he approaches the game, he teaches the game. Not only does he give an air of confidence to his players when he rarely, if ever, talks about the opposition that they're going up against, but he also develops players. And the best managers in Major League Soccer are the ones that utilize his players 1 through 23, 25, and even in Columbus's aspect, MLS Next Pro, with them continuously bringing players up through that pathway. Wilfried Nancy is the sexiest manager in the league. Columbus Crew is the sexiest team in the league, and there's a reason why I think they got a good shot of repeating as MLS Cup champions.
I think we've got a new competition to have at the end of the season, not just best manager. All right, Columbus Crew will be going up against Atlanta United on Saturday, a little rematch from the first round of the playoffs, and it was an incredibly successful offseason for Atlanta United. Fans are excited about it, locking up Jean De Silva, Dax McCarty, veteran presence in the midfield. They had the elite pieces last season in Thiago Almada, in Giakoumakis. Like I said, bounce in the first round to the eventual winners in the Columbus Crew. Matt Doyle, do these offseason moves now make Atlanta United a trophy contender?
If they can keep Thiago Almada home and happy. And that is a big if with this player right now. He's a World Cup winner. He is going to be the centerpiece, or a centerpiece at the very least, of Argentina's Olympic team this summer. He was a record signing. He is potentially a record outbound transfer. We're talking potentially $30 million for this player from the likes of an Atletico Madrid. He is on the radar of clubs that do not hear no often when they go after players that they really, really want. And this is the poker table that Atlanta's playing at now. It's the highest stakes table in the world. And Almada has said he wants to go to Europe. Well, Atlanta have a real incentive to sell him if the money's right, but they have an incentive to keep him too, because they finally built this team out. It feels like an actual team, not just a collection of talent, but he's the straw that stirs the drink. He's the number 10. He was the MVP candidate last year. Arguably, he is one of the favorites to win. No, arguably, he's the favorite to win the MVP this year. But what if he's gone? It's huge for Atlanta.
Yeah, no questions about Thiago Almada, his talent, and that partnership with Giakoumakis, who is just relentless. If he stays healthy, we've already seen that partnership bear fruit. Almada led the league in assists, Giakoumakis second in the Golden Boot. My question is more defensively. They were the third worst team in the East as far as goals conceded. Only Inter Miami and TFC were worse.
You just got finished singing Columbus Crew's praises for winning MLS Cup while being the highest scoring team, and sure, they give up a couple goals. Atlanta do the same thing, and suddenly you're concerned about that. You think they can't be a cup winner.
We get to see this matchup, and we saw it last year. Columbus were able to figure out the defensive problems. Of course, they missed Almada in that first leg, and that gives you a little bit of a window of what that team might look like if Almada does leave. But I still have some concerns. I know they've gone out and brought in some signings, new goalkeeper as well to step in. That could help that back line, but I still think to go from third worst in the East to the top in a brutal East that you pointed out, I still have some question marks.
Taylor Twellman, you
I think this is the most. I think it's the most balanced roster Atlanta's had in the last 4 years. And you can make an argument it's the most balanced roster they've had since winning MLS Cup in 2018. It's not the most talented. Those are mutually exclusive. It is the most balanced roster. And I think a big part of that is where Garth Lagaway's come in. He's looked at it and said, we need to plug some holes. I get it. They lost Miles Robinson. I think defensively they're better. They've got a younger defensive midfielder that now pushes Mwamba to now is the number 8. Even if you sell Thiago Almada this summer, even if you sell them, I think they're top 3 or 4 in the East, and I think they got a legitimate shot of winning this whole thing.
Let's talk about a club that did contend for trophies last season, and that was LAFC, the 2022 MLS Cup champions. Runners-up in 3 finals, a lackluster exit as well from Leagues Cup. They lost the MLS Cup final to the Columbus Crew as well as the CCL final. LAFC off-season moves. Club legend Carlos Vela moving on. One of the best center backs of all time in Giorgio Chiellini retiring, but they made a bunch of moves. World Cup winner, goalkeeper Hugo Lloris, he is in bringing back Atuesta. Saturday, you got your first chance to see these guys in a playoff rematch against the Sounders. Taylor Twellman, back-to-back finals for LAFC this year. How do they make it 3?
I think that's a question you need to ask me this summer, because I think this summer they're going to go out and make sure that they solidify this roster. I love the moves. I think the moves, I fell in love with the moves the moment they brought back Atuesta. I think Ilie Sanchez and Father Time are holding hands right now, and they need to be a little bit more dynamic through the middle. And Atuesta is one of the best midfielders this league's ever seen. Bob Bradley built the entire thing around Vela, Rossi, and Atuesta through the middle. And keep in mind, we've got Vela on the out graphic there. There is a slight chance that Vela comes back. They got younger. They got more dynamic. They got a little more unproven, but you got Bouanga coming back, and that's a key focus for this team. I think he's the front runner to win Golden Boot. He's going to be happier. I think they're going to try to re-sign him. But this summer, with 2 DP spots open and the 2 international competitions coming to an end, I will be stunned if LAFC not only use one of those, but use both of those. And I do think they'll be the first team since the revolution in 05, 06, 07, make it back to MLS Cup 3 times in a row.
Ooh. I knew you were going there, and that wasn't just the New England Revolution. That was Taylor Twellman's New England Revolution.
And so I agree with just about everything Taylor said. I'm not going to predict them to make MLS Cup, but I agree with everything Taylor said about the acquisitions this winter and about what they could potentially do this summer. My question is in terms of their game model, because think about LAFC a few years ago, they played this beautiful flowing soccer. They have gone almost completely in the other direction over the past 2 years under Steve Cherundolo, to the point where in the playoffs against Seattle, against Houston, and then against Columbus, they were down around 30% possession. And there are real questions of what your ceiling is as a club if you just refuse to use the ball like that. So I think they need to make the additions, but I also think they need a reassessment of the game model. They need to have a little bit more of a plan B than what they had in 2023. And if they have those 2 things, then yeah, at the end of the year, nobody's going to want to face this team in the playoffs.
LAFC will be facing Seattle this weekend. And now Seattle is a team that finished 2nd in the Western Conference last year. And it always felt, guys, like Seattle was 1 star away from contending. A lot of discussion around, is their window closing for a championship? Will they go out and they make this big signing? 23-year-old winger Pedro de la Vega from Lanús, the same club as Diego Valeri's boyhood club in Argentina. Calen, does this move now make the Sounders your favorite in the West?
Yes, and I think pretty clearly. When you look at the Western Conference, Doyle, you mentioned the East being the favorites. I think a regression from St. Louis is on the way. You're talking about LAFC. Incomplete for me right now as far as what that summer window looks like. Of course, John Thornton has done a good job in the past as far as giving them an opportunity to continue to compete for trophies. But for me, it's still death taxes and Brian Schmetzer. He has continually brought this team into the right spots. Diego Valeri has great things to say about De La Vega, not just because he's from Lanús, but because he can play different positions, fit into this system well. They have young players, Jackson Reagan, Obed Vargas, Baker Whiting. They have experience, Steph Fry. They've kept that core with Roldan and Morris. So I still think the Sounders are the out-and-out big favorites in the Western Conference.
Maybe even the Supporter Shield favorites, because the West is a little bit weaker, and this team is complete right now. The real question for the Sounders, can De La Vega be that guy in the biggest game? Can he be that A-plus piece who puts a team over in the playoffs? We won't know that question. We won't know the answer to that question, of course, until November. But they went out and they spent $6 million on him for that exact reason.
All the questions last year were around St. Louis City, the expansion side that took Major League Soccer by storm, setting every expansion record on the planet, the best start, clinching the Western Conference. So, Taylor, we know about the product in the city. We know about the heartbeat in St. Louis. But what about the product on the field for 2024? What can we expect?
Well, naturally, when you win the West in your opening season, there may be a little regression when you don't win the West, but I'm not so sure it's going to be that big of a regression because from all accounts in the preseason, St. Louis City has a chip on their shoulder for the way it ended last season. I thought Roman Berkey said it best. It's balancing the unexpected achievement with the brutal disappointment by which they lost to their rivals, Sporting Kansas City. I like the moves going out and getting 2 fullbacks, a little bit younger, a little bit more dynamic. Sporting Kansas City killed them in the playoffs in wide areas. But you're seeing the highlights. Edwin Leuven's got to show up. In big games at the end of the year, he was non-existent. João Klaus has to be healthy for a full year. By every metric, they outperformed by which they played. I get that there's going to be a little regression. Roman Berkey stood on his head. Sure, he's going to come back to a little bit. But this summer, Lutz Pfannenstiel and that ownership group is going to have to make a decision. Because if you add 2 DPs, legit DPs to this roster and Bradley Carnell, now you're talking about a completely different equation in St. Louis City. I still think they're going to come out of the gate strong, but I think this summer they're going to have to make a massive decision whether or not to spend some money and add it to this team so at the end of the year they don't fall flat the way they did in 2023.
St. Louis will be taking on RSL on Saturday. We're also interesting offseason, not for player reasons, but for personnel reasons. Still the head coach in Pablo Mastroeni, but the franchise getting rid of his entire assistant coaching staff. They did add an extension to Mastroeni's deal. So Doyle, make it make sense.
Yeah, I think they wanted a tactical change. I should mention as well, they did get rid of 2 DPs. Damir Kreilach is gone. Jefferson Savarino, they sold him back to a team in Brazil. So there have been personnel changes, but I think the big thing is going to be the tactical changes. And they wanted to bring in assistants who would push Pablo, maybe to emphasize a little bit more pitch control. And we'll see that manifest itself by a switch from the flat 4-4-2, which has been the go-to formation for this team for a couple of years, to more of a 4-2-3-1. They're going to be less reliant on long balls, and nobody in MLS hit more long balls than RSL last year. Less reliant on long balls and more reliant upon creating wide overloads with the fullbacks pushing up and then opening pockets for the number 10s to play in the half spaces. That includes Diego Luna, one of the most exciting young players in the league. It's going to be fascinating. I also think it's a little bit tough on Pablo Mastroeni because they're asking him to do 3 different things, including play out of the back. And it's like, if it goes wrong, are you going to ask him? Or are you going to ask the assistants he hired? Or are you going to ask the new chief soccer officer, Kurt Schmidt? Because there have been that many moving pieces in this RSL club over the past 4 months.
One team that lifted some hardware last year is FC Cincinnati, the Supporter Shield winners. A lot of turnover on this roster, losing 4 key starters. Brandon Vasquez, Yerson Mosquera, but Cincinnati bringing in guys like Pavel Bucha and U.S. men's national team defender Miles Robinson from Atlanta United. Calen, you said when we talked at the top, you said that they can repeat. When you look at these moves, did Cincinnati level up or level down?
It's tough to say they've leveled up losing a player like Brandon Vasquez and Mosquera, but I think they've at least kept level ground. And when you think of this team, this is a destination now. Cincinnati is a destination. The first time I see a name in free agency linked, the first flight they go to is getting off at TQL Stadium, which is a big shift from where they were in the past, the Wooden Spoons 3 years in a row. And that comes with that success, that comes with the trust that's been built from that front office, from Albright, and working with Pat Noonan, and the pieces start to fit. So I think Barrett is going to really help coming over from Houston. And then Miles Robinson, the big move for me, keeping that back line intact. Orellano is going to come in. You hear good things about Bucha stepping in, and you still have in that 3-4-1-2 formation, the MVP right there that makes everything tick. Lucho Acosta, for me, the most exciting player that I like to watch week in, week out. I think he gives them a chance to go to that next level and this time try to fight for the cup.
So it's a level up.
It's a level up.
Okay. Taylor?
It's a level up, except the biggest question mark for Pat Noonan, his staff, and the players is between the years. Because they lost 2 of the biggest games they had last season, up 2-0, both against Inter Miami in the Open Cup semifinal and the Columbus Crew in the Eastern Conference final. They lost both of those games. And so the question mark is going to be, are they fragile in those moments? Are they going to be able to get over the hump? And I'm talking about a team that won the Supporter Shield. I think they leveled up with their moves. I really do. And that comes with Vasquez scoring goals for fun in Mexico. I still think there's another move potentially for Chris Albright this summer. But I think this is between the years. I think this group got stunned with the way they lost the Eastern Conference Final following that Open Cup semifinal loss to Messi, where they completely played Inter Miami off the field for 83 minutes, yet they lost both of those at home. I think that's the biggest question mark for Pat Noonan and FC Cincinnati this year.
There's a lot of question marks for the topic of our next team, from Supporters Shield winners to Wooden Spoon winners. If anyone can feel your pain, Toronto, it's Cincinnati fans. Biggest signing, though, was last year in John Herdman, replacing American coaching legend Bob Bradley. Herdman just one game at the helm, the decision day loss. Michael Bradley's unceremonious exit from Major League Soccer and retirement after an illustrious career. This is his resume, coaching both the women's and men's Canadian national teams. Now he finds himself the head coach of Toronto FC. When we look at a full season ahead, so much is going to come down to Bernadeschi and Insigne. The rumor mill was flying. Do they get along? Do they not get along? Can they play together? Can they not play together? Taylor, how much of Herdman's success is going to rely on the two Italians?
I mean, all of it rests on that, because that's how the roster's been built. I think John Herdman, unfortunately, is more worried about whether Italian ice is going to be served at the team meals than he is about this team tactically. Now, all kidding aside, the truth of the matter is this. When I talk to other teams and players in the league that have seen Toronto in the preseason, they said it's a different team. They said it's a better team. But I put in quotes, preseason. And yes, they get Sean Johnson back, who was injured for a lot of 2023. But this team is as fragile as any team as possible. And if this season starts weak, slow, then they're going to fold. And this is also a manager that's never coached at a club team. He's only coached at the international level. It's apples to oranges, day in, day out, dealing with psyches, not having the ability always to be up and down, but to have an even keel. This is going to be a learning experience for Herdman as well. In the East, where Matt Doyle rightfully said it is the cream of the crop in Major League Soccer this year, I just think Toronto's up against it, and that's them finishing last season. I think they're better than they were last year, but I think this is as fragile of a group as I've ever seen in MLS history, and I just don't see them turning the corner.
Yeah, Taylor, when you being in preseason, how many teams have you been on that say, hey, enjoy your football. We're going to try to keep the ball. We're going to play with it. This is a new beginning. This is a brotherhood. And then you get to match day one and you get punched in the mouth. And that's what happened to this Toronto FC team last year. They lost late in the 97th minute to DC on the road. Cudi Pietro gets the late winner. And from there, it just kept sinking. The results kept going. So I'm keeping an eye on Toronto FC, especially early in this season, because in MLS, your best players can't just be your best players. Maybe if you're at Juventus, they have to be your leaders as well. And that's where the leadership was really missing from these two. They make more between the two of them than 11 MLS teams altogether. So that's a crazy amount of money that they've invested. That's why it's so top heavy. So if it goes wrong with these two, that's where things can really start to sink.
Another team playing on Sunday's triple header is Nashville SC and Hani Mukhtar. And it feels like, guys, it has been the same story. He has an MVP caliber, MVP candidate type of season, but yet he doesn't have enough around him. Based on what you've seen, Calen, how different is 2024 looking for Nashville?
Well, I know they are trying to make it different, and Hani has even come out and said, hey, we've got to shift the tactics a little bit. We've got to be a little bit more aggressive. I need help. He's come out and said this even in the past where he's gotten frustrated. Is he going to stay? Can they keep him? What's going on here? But on the pitch, he gets it done for me. Jumps off the page, 54 league goals in the last 3 years. Even in a down year last year, he had 15 and 11. The MVP, Lucho had 17 and 14, but there's no Bupenza, there's no Brenner, there's no Vasquez walking through that door for Hani. It's still on him. The profile of the players they've built around him. I like a Schaffelberg. I think he's a great player, but that's a different type of profile that Nashville is going for that hasn't been able to give Hani the support that he needs.
1 goal in his last 18 regular season games last year, Calen. 1 goal. And so
it's tough to carry the weight, Taylor. It's tough to carry that big backpack.
Yeah, it is, but you gave me the numbers before the Leagues Cup final. And the reason why I say that is Nashville has not recovered. They don't look the same. They aren't the same in preseason this year. They're playing the first 15 to 25 minutes, high pressing with the back line that was arguably the best back line in the league. That's not a back line that thrives in high pressing moments. That's a back line that thrives in mid to low block absorb the pressure and let Hani Mukhtar run for good. They need a 9. They went out and spent money on Sam Surge. I've had my hand up from the beginning. I don't know if I see Sam Surge scoring 15 goals in this league. And I find it interesting we're talking about Hani Mukhtar Nashville, because I think the newcomer of the year favorite is Forsberg with the New York Red Bulls, and they want him to be Hani Mukhtar. They want him to run the show and do everything by himself without a number 9. And that's where Matt Doyle, for me, if the New York Red Bulls could learn anything from Nashville, is that you get Forsberg, who reminds me a lot of Hani Mukhtar, but supply him with a 9. Go out and spend money and get yourself a bona fide 9. And then you could say to Nashville, well, we appreciate the blueprint you gave us with Hani Mukhtar, but now we're going to trump you and bring a 9 to surround him. I think Forsberg's going to be very good this year with the Red Bulls, and I just find it funny that they're opening the regular season against Nashville because there's so much symmetry between the two number 10s for both respective teams.
Yeah, I would be shocked if Forsberg isn't very good right from the jump with this Red Bull team, because he's been in the Red Bull system for almost a decade at this point. He was a star in the Swedish league, then went to RB Leipzig in 2015. He has been the most consistent chance creator in the sort of context of energy drink soccer that we have ever seen. And this is a relatively new style of play. Only over the past 15 years or so have teams started to play like this. So Forsberg has made a real mark, and what he does every moment is a transition moment when he is on the ball. Other players, they map the field and they know exactly where they're going before they even receive the pass. Forsberg has this instinct of knowing where he's going before the challenge is even made, right? So it's not about completing passes. It's about 50-50s, or even, God, the way Red Bull plays is like 30-70s, they treat everything like a life or death challenge. So he's been so good at that for so long that it's plug and play. And I think he's going to end up elevating the guys who are there, including Dante Van Zier, who was so disappointing last year, but also Sergio Goma, the 18-year-old homegrown attacker. He was supposed to break out last year. He got hurt. He missed the whole season. He's back. He has reportedly looked very good. I do think they're still going to go out and get a number 9, but they might have one already from within. And given Red Bull's history of developing players, local players from New Jersey, New York, it wouldn't shock me at all if Ngoma has a big breakout year.
So there's no doubt that Forsberg makes Red Bull better. But Calen, we saw New York Red Bull sneak into the playoffs last year. Does this make them solid trophy contenders?
I would say scrap instead of sneak in. I mean, that was the identity of this team. But in the playoffs, they missed that top end talent, and that's where I think Forsberg does give them somebody to give the ball to in a difficult moment, in a match that's difficult, to give him the ball and say, okay, maybe it's not Luquinhas. You've got Edelman, you've got Amaya, these guys behind him. The back line is elite, but that next piece to build forward, to go from back to front, where it's not just pressing, but a little bit of that quality, I think Forsberg is going to go a long way towards that.
It was tough last year. Last year, an MLS record 11 coaching changes in 2023. 8 of those coaches making their debuts this week, so that gives us lots to talk about, including Minnesota United reportedly lining up Manchester United assistant Eric Ramsey. We'll have more on that in just a moment. Let's start in the Rose City. New manager Phil Neville, previously coaching for his bud David Beckham in Miami. Now he is coaching for Merritt Paulson and the Portland Timbers. So Doyle, what are the expectations for Neville in a city like Portland that demands success?
Our old buddy from last summer on League's Cup wrap-up. But no, we got to know Phil pretty well, and he is going to expect to have success right out of the gates, even though this roster is incomplete. There are 2 DP slots open. I know that there was a big game spoken of during the offseason about adding 2 sort of record-breaking DPs. That hasn't happened yet, so kind of going into this season with one hand tied behind their backs. That said, did really good work signing Maxime Crepeau in goal. I think that is a clear upgrade. And then getting Kamal Miller at left center back from Inter Miami for a little bit of allocation cash. That is fantastic work. I think they are better up the spine, but I think right now they are thin on the wings. They have a question mark at center forward, and Diego Chara still keeps going. He turns 38 in April. So they have to get an answer there. They have to limit his minutes across all competitions, or it's going to be a struggle for our old buddy Phil.
It's all but up for the Colorado Rapids, who finished second from the bottom in the league last year. Sacha, how tough is the task for Chris Armas this season?
Well, it's going to be a tough one. It's an uphill battle when you finish last place in the league. But I like what Colorado has done with Chris Armas to add new players in the transfer market. Georgi Mihailovic, MLS proven talent. Zach Steffen in goalkeeper, MLS proven talent. And they added Sam Vines, who used to play for the Colorado Rapids and now is back. I know Chris Armas personally, played for him at the New York Red Bulls. He was my assistant coach for 3 years and is one of the hardest working people I've ever met and a great guy to bring the players together. I'm excited to see what Colorado can do this season.
Yeah, Sash, I played with Armas, and he was my assistant as well. It felt like he was the assistant when he was a player as well. He's just a natural leader. But I think the thing that you pointed out, Sash, that's spot on, is all of these guys have something to prove. You think of Vines, you think of Mihailovic and Zach Steffen, guys that went to Europe, now came back, trying to get back into the national team picture. And I think Chris Armas as well. You look at this Toronto experiment, what went wrong there? A little harder to judge now with some context. Him now coming back to MLS in a place where I think he can really focus just on the football in Colorado. I think he has a big chance, but I like that this team has something to prove.
Another team that has something to prove is Charlotte FC, parting ways with two of their designated players. Former Premier League manager Dean Smith led Aston Villa back to the Premier League in 2019, looking now to make his mark here in Major League. Sacha, does Dean Smith have the pieces, though, to be successful this season?
Right now, I would say unequivocally no. But he has come in and said, these are not my DPs, shipped out Józwiak, shipped out Swiderski, and now if they can bring in a couple of high-impact DPs, okay, maybe. But I'm interested in watching how Dean Smith's team plays. At Leicester, he played in a 4-2-3-1, defended out of a 4-4-2, and tried to keep the other team from the middle of the field, try to win that midfield battle. So I'm intrigued early on to see tactically how Dean Smith sets up this roster. 5 years ago, we would have said a foreign coach coming into Major League Soccer. I'm not so sure about that. But some other coaches have bucked that trend, and it will be interesting to see what Dean Smith can do in Charlotte.
A foreign coach, Wayne Rooney came back to DC United to manage last year. They parted ways with him, and they bring in Troy Lesane, who the New York Red Bulls did not move on. He was the interim manager, and they had success under him. So, Calen, it's an interesting hire for DC because you think to yourself, well, what did DC United see in Lesane that the New York Red Bulls didn't?
I think he did a good job with Red Bull. I mean, came in a nearly impossible situation, had just one win, a lot of turmoil around the team, got the team together, 14 wins in the playoffs, a huge win against Charlotte. And so, it's not a surprise to see someone else pick him up. Now, the surprise for me is how does this fit? And that's the question mark for me because Lesane's team's average age, starting lineup was 23 last year. DC is 30. So that high press system that we saw him play in the past, I'm not sure if it works with DC. We saw Wayne Rooney having to play Tyler Miller as a sweeper keeper, running a beep test every match because they couldn't turn and run. So the personnel just doesn't quite fit to push further up the pitch. That's what I'm going to be watching week 1.
A proven manager in MLS is Caleb Porter. He won MLS Cup with the Portland Timbers. He did it with the Columbus Crew. And now, Sacha, he looks to do it with the New England Revolution. How poised are they to do so?
Well, of all the coaches, new coaches in Major League Soccer this season, Caleb Porter has walked into the one with the best roster, hands down. This New England team has star players. They've got Mark-Anthony Kaye, Polster in the midfield, strong. Bayraktarevich in the midfield. This guy is a young player, played for the U.S. national team. And then we move up front. Carlos Gil, Barrero when he comes back from injury, Chancalay. This team is stacked in attack. So Caleb Porter walks into a very good team, gives them a little bit of tactical organization, and I think we see some really good things out of New England Revolution this season.
Stability is going to be something so important for that Rev side. After the summer, they endured parting ways with American coaching legend Bruce Arena. This is a team that had 3 different managers in the course of about a month, and you think that's crazy, and then Minnesota says, well, hold my beer for a second. They part ways with Adrian Heath after, with just 2 weeks left in the season. Then they have 2 interim managers in the offseason. Now there's rumors of Eric Ramsey coming in. Doyle, no head coach named officially yet. What are you thinking for Minnesota?
I'm weirdly bullish on this team. I just love Emmanuel Reynoso so much, and they have him from the start this year. Now, it does look like he picked up a little knock in training this week, but hopefully it won't be a long-term thing. They have Timu Pukki from the start this year. He was excellent when he came over at the end of the transfer window last summer. They have Bongi Longwani, who's ready to break out. Robin Lod is healthy again. I do think they strengthened their deep-lying midfield. I do think they strengthened their back line. It's almost idiot-proof, guys. You can almost put just any coach here and expect a good season from Minnesota United. I'm all in on the Loons. I'm ready for Loons 2024.
You're crazy, Matt. You're crazy. You're gone wild. I don't know what you're drinking in the studio over there. A team that had no coach for the last 3 months, no preseason with a new coach coming in. I don't know what's going on in Minnesota, but I can't trust a team that doesn't have a head coach. And not only that, they're going to hire a 32-year-old head coach that has 4 players on the roster older than him. I don't know, man. I can't wait to see what's going to happen in Minnesota.
To be determined on Tuesday. Reynoso did leave training. We'll see how that develops throughout the week. Let's talk about Montreal. Expectations also high there. Hernan Losada fired after Montreal missed the playoffs by just 2 points on decision day. They hired Laurent Courtois, who is looking to be the next Wilfred Nancy of sorts. Bring this team some success. His first job at the top level. Wilfred Nancy did it, Sasha. How does he find the same success this season?
Laurent Courtois comes from Columbus, as you mentioned, who plays that beautiful football under Wilfred Nancy. And we've heard some rumors in preseason that he's gone back to Montreal, implemented a similar style, but even at a higher tempo, maybe a little bit more risky. So early on in the season, I'm also going to be looking at tactically and technically how this team plays. Columbus can play that way because they have quality players all over the field. I'm not so sure about in Montreal, but the players have got to be thrilled. Some of those players who played for Wilfred Nancy 2 years ago go back to that playing style. I think it's exciting times in Montreal, but we'll see what happens.
Sasha, you made the point that Columbus can play that way because they have quality players all over the field. But that was not the perception 2 years ago before Wilfred Nancy was there. His superpower as a head coach is he gets the best out of everyone, whether it's a youngster or veteran, putting them into positions to really hit a new level. Steven Moreira and Malty Amundsen, both on the back line. That's what Laurent Courtois has to do if he's going to be successful. It's not just going to be developing the high upside kids like Nathan Saliba or Rita Zuhair. He has to make sure that Victor Wanyama hits the heights that he hit in 2022, that Joel Waterman finds a new level, George Campbell, a young American center back, that he could be a high-level starter in MLS. That is the real challenge for him heading into this season. I almost think where they finish in the table, especially because the East is a bloodbath, that's almost immaterial. Can you show that you have the ability to get players to improve? Once you have that as the foundation, then it's about 2020, the end of 2024 into 2025 and 2026 for Laurent Courtois and this Montreal team. Like, that is the real measuring stick.
One manager who's
will
been
Joey
around.
Will Joey Saputo give him the time to do that? Because we've seen so many coaching changes over the years in Montreal. That's a question.
Remembering Wilfred Nancy was only there 2 years, hopefully longer for Courtois.
One guy who has a lot of years under his belt in Chicago is Frank Klopas, though the interim tag removed in the offseason. He is now the head coach of the Chicago Fire. And what an offseason it has been for your former side, Calen Carr. Put your partialism off to the side. A reported $12 million club record signing. That's right, more money than Shaqiri. Striker Hugo Capers from Belgium's first division. Kellen Acosta coming from LAFC. So the fans are pumped. There's a lot of optimism around this Fire side. How warranted is it, Calen Carr?
Well, I like all these moves. If you add Kellen Acosta to any MLS club, he's going to instantly make them better.
That's a U.S. men's national
and
team
he's a
midfielder.
winner. He's a winner, most importantly, which Chicago hasn't had in the past. Kuipers as well. You think about a club record fee coming over for a number 9. Was at Ghent, Belgian. A lot of talent. I think he's going to come in and score goals. But the problem is the money, the spend has never been the issue for the Fire. They were in the top 5 in spending last year. And their star player, Shaqiri, is the highest paid player not named Lionel Messi in MLS. And for me, that's where the problem still stands with Chicago. Shaqiri has not been good enough. He's been a disappointment for me as far as a designated player to wear the badge of Chicago Fire. When you think of the greats, Cuauhtemoc Blanco, Peter Novak, guys that fought for trophies and fought every week. So it's not just about the stats for me. 5 goals, 5 assists last year. That's not the highest paid player not named Lionel Messi in the league. It's really about what does he do week to week? Because last year we saw against Inter Miami, when the stadium sold out, the bright lights are on, we see the best out of Shaqiri.
Then what happened
But the next week, we see against Charlotte, and they're out of the playoffs. So they finished 3 points out of the playoffs last year. And those little margins start to show. And that's where I have the question marks of saying, okay, all these big numbers, all these big pieces are coming in. but it's the same front office that's made these choices. They didn't inherit these contracts, and now they're having to do some reconstructive surgery.
But Capers, how much of that is his problem of the lack of showing that Shaqiri had?
Well, I think it's going to help. He's going to help a lot because they didn't have a number 9 to lead the line, to finish chances. Maybe him and Gutierrez can be able to connect. 20-year-old U.S. Youth International, ton of talent, 9 assists last season, needs to add goals. But being able to play provider and create a partnership between those two, having a number 9, I think will make a big difference.
Fire were dead last in chance creation in MLS last year. Dead last in key passes, 24th in expected assists. That's the real issue.
And now they have Belgium's top league's Golden Boot winner. Let's move on. FC Dallas taking on San Jose. Dallas making a big forward signing with Croatian Peter Musa. Does he take FC Dallas to another level?
Hopefully he can, but it's going to be happening in part with a tactical change. I think we're seeing Nico Estevez in the preseason. He's gone to a 3-4-2-1. They're playing less about positional play and pitch control for defensive reasons and more about the Columbus Crew sort of principles of play. Like, okay, build slowly from the back, invite pressure upfield, and then release guys like Bernard Kamungo and Jesus Ferreira and hopefully Peter Musa into the attacking third and into the box to finish off goals. I like it. I wanted to see Estevez sort of take the governor off over the past year and a half. Let them play a little bit. I want the same thing to happen for San Jose. They need to go out and get a DP playmaker. They said goodbye to Jamiro Montero after the season. Lucia Gonzalez has said that they're going to bring in a new DP number 10. They need that badly.
One team that got a lot out of their designated player last year was the Houston Dynamo. Ben Olsen totally getting the best out of the Mexican international. They go all the way to the Western Conference final. Herrera injured now to start the season. Calen, how do they start the year without him?
It's a big loss. I think there can be some players with opportunities. Brooklyn Reigns, 18-year-old homegrown player, is going to get, sounds like a chance. Quinones, another injury. So you start to look at this team last year. They pushed all the chips in. They put a lot of the cap forward last year, and it paid off in a big way. It brought fans back into the stadium. They win their home playoff game, advance almost all the way to MLS Cup, and Hector Herrera was at the heart of it, 17 assists. But I worry, not inside the team, but outside maybe, people are gonna realize how big of a figure Hector Herrera is, maybe by his absence, because I think it's very difficult to replace a player of this caliber. He runs the entire team, the tempo, such a big figure, so they're gonna have to hope that he gets healthy and other players step up in his absence.
Let's kick it up a notch. Let's make things a little spicy before we say goodbye. Bradley Wright-Phillips, start with you. Biggest underdog for 2024?
The team I look at mostly, I'd say last season, that don't get the credit they deserve and I think could make the next step for a better playoff run is Vancouver. I think Vancouver have an out-and-out goal scorer in Brian White. I think they have a very underrated playmaker in Ryan Gold, who can distribute the ball, take the game over, score goals. Then they have some young players. Ali Ahmed, I think he's a baller. And Pedro Villa, they're all good players. They had a great season. They finished 6th last season. I look at Houston now. Houston, Sacha, I see you shaking your head. You'll get your chance. I see Houston, no Herrera beginning of the season. Taylor, shush, I see your mouth ready to talk. Be quiet. Houston, they're not going to have Herrera. I don't see why they can't take that spot, get a home playoff match. St. Louis, are they going to have the same season? I don't see why Vancouver can't push and get a home playoff pitch.
Bradley, where do you live?
None of your business. New Jersey.
No, I'm just curious. How many games have you watched Vancouver 90 minutes?
A bunch. I saw them a lot last year. I worked on the 360 show last year.
He was up all night.
Yeah, which, by the way, 360 show ended before every single Vancouver game kicked off.
No, me and Sacha were doing graveyard shift. We were doing graveyard shift.
I'll give you this bit. I think Ryan Gold, best DP that nobody talks about in this league. Absolutely, 100%. But you're talking about biggest underdog in Vancouver Whitecaps. So you are saying they're going to finish 2nd or 1st in the West?
No, I'm saying maybe a 4th. 4th. That would be an improvement.
And
I feel like they get
finished
overlooked.
last year?
Pardon?
They finished
6th
last year.
They finished 6th. So there's no difference in a home game.
Let's not forget, too, Vancouver has to start their season without Vanni Sartini for 6 games because of his antics at the end of the year. So that doesn't make it any easier.
No.
Sasha, I didn't know what this question meant. So now apparently if Toronto finishes 14th instead of where they finished last year,
I didn't know what
that's not
underdog
good.
They're the biggest underdog.
No, that isn't a good season. If you're not making the playoffs, that's terrible.
Brad, let me take this segment for you and show you what an underdog is. It's the
Go on.
Colorado Rapids this season. They finished in last place in the West on 27 points. This year, they're making the playoffs. That's an underdog story.
Sasha's
okay?
got no.
Nobody's been paying attention to the Colorado Rapids. They added some good players. They added Chris Armas. This is a team that is going to take that step, not a team that's playing in the CONCACAF Champions League right now.
Sasha, you think Colorado are going to make the playoffs?
That's a bold take, but yes.
Yeah,
It's a bold take, which is
but
exactly
is it
what the
realistic?
word
That's not
underdog
happening.
means, Bradley Wright-Phillips.
Pardon? They're an underdog. How many
The
times you
word
talk about
underdog
Vancouver?
is
How many
exactly
times you talk about
that.
Vancouver being a good team? They're an underdog to me. In that playoff batch, they are an underdog.
Yeah, I've talked about Vancouver being a good team for the last 3 years. They're
I
a
ain't
good
heard it.
team.
I heard
They're
you say
solid
Miami's
team.
a good team.
They're not gonna outkick their coverage by winning the West. That would be by definition true. They're in the playoffs. They're in CONCACAF Champions Cup this year. They're not an underdog.
They don't. Yeah.
I think Colorado making the playoffs is an interesting take. I like it. They've had 24 transactions in this season coming into this season. Chris Armas, a little bit of an unknown still as a head coach. But Sasha's answering the question, Bradley. Biggest underdog. At least that's a take.
Taylor.
Sasha's
You just
building
picked
content.
Vancouver because you
Sasha's
won
building
yourself in New
content.
Jersey.
He's building content. Colorado ain't getting
All right,
nowhere.
let's put a pin in debating the meaning of underdog. And Taylor Twellman, who is your underdog? Please.
Oh, he's building content. I like the Portland Timbers. I think Portland are in this conversation. They haven't made the playoffs 2 straight years. I just don't see that happening for a third year. And the biggest reason why is that owner said they're going to go out and get a 9. They're going to spend money on a 9. They haven't done it yet. Here we are in the middle of February. The season's about to kick off. They haven't done it yet. So I'm putting the onus on Mayor Polson in that front office to go get a 9 because you made the right moves this team needed. Maxime Crepeau, Kamal Miller, Eric Williamson coming back from an ACL, a fantastic midfielder. They've got all the pieces there that if you add a 9, Berterame or someone of the sort, you could blow the doors off and surprise everyone, maybe win the West. I don't see that happening, but getting yourself a home playoff game if you go out and sign the right 9 and spend money like you promised. If they do so, Sasha and Bradley Wright-Phillips, they will not only be in the playoffs, but I'd be shocked if they don't have a home playoff game in that opening round.
It's a lot of ifs. It's a
lot
lot of ifs. Yeah. Great mind, Sash. It's a lot of ifs.
All right.
And when was the last time Portland signed a DP number 9 striker that actually produced 15 goals?
They
in
haven't.
a season?
That's the biggest if. That's the biggest if. That's why I'm saying
getting
that
on me
they are an
with my underdog take.
because they've
Unacceptable.
never signed a goal scorer at that 9 position. A big if, but a fun one.
When you're here in studio with me, I got your back. But when
Yeah,
you stay
thank
home, I don't have your back anymore. Let's talk about the summer transfer window when more big names could be coming. A lot of ifs. We'll see. It's such a big summer ahead. You've got Copa America. You've got the Euros. Throw the Olympics in there. Taylor Twellman, who do you want to see come to Major League Soccer this summer transfer window? We'll just try to top, Messi coming last year.
Well, great segue because here I am talking about 9 with Portland Timbers. I'm going to say Robert Lewandowski. I would love to see Robert Lewandowski with the Chicago Fire. I don't think that's going to happen because Lewandowski and his missus said they want to go to the West Coast. Where does that mean? LA Galaxy. This summer, with the way they've gone out and brought in some dynamic wingers, if they figure out the roster, see a way to get Lewandowski at the LA Galaxy. Sasha, I think you are talking about a real home run, someone that could still score 15, 20 goals a year. But I have a funny feeling you're going to pick LAFC and someone else.
Oh, listen, LA Galaxy and Lewandowski, it seems like a match made in heaven. Lewandowski still has goals in him. We've seen that for the past decade in Europe. But yes, LAFC, they've got open DP spot, actually. It's a lot easier for them to go and get out. I want to see them sign Antoine Griezmann. Playing that false number 9, kind of like Carlos Vela has done over the past couple of years. Griezmann still has a lot left in the tank. All-time leading scorer for Atletico Madrid. one of the best French national team players ever. Bring him to Hollywood. Let's go.
Bradley, you know what they could do? They could actually, LAFC could technically sign Griezmann and Lewandowski.
Do you know what they should do, Taylor? Do you know who LAFC should sign? A Lacazette.
Who?
That's the better 9.5 that can come into space, play players like Buanga in behind, past the back line. I think Lacazette will be a better fix, a better player, a better match for that LAFC side. 100%.
Then Griezmann?
Better player than
Not better
Griezmann?
player. I think he will suit the team more. Yeah. Did you see Lacazette at Arsenal?
Hello? Yeah,
Did you see Lacazette at Arsenal?
Hey, Bradley, they want to. I called 911 to have your brain checked.
You know what we do? Let's do Lewandowski. Let's do Lewandowski to Chicago. Let's see how much service he gets. That's rubbish.
What?
Lewandowski at Chicago, you said.
Brad, you said Lacazette better player than Antoine Griezmann.
Not better player.
Look at
better
the games they
LAFC.
played for the.
Better at LAFC.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Oh, no,
Taylor's
we're
going
going
to jump
rogue.
out the window.
At the
Better
penthouse.
at LAFC for sure.
Well, what we don't have.
100%.
Huh? I got nothing for you.
Ain't you got to be out of it? So you think?
I got to be out of here in 3 minutes because Suarez needs a cappuccino.
I was going to say something crazy then. Lewandowski also at Chicago. That doesn't work for me, Taylor. It doesn't work.
I didn't. No. You didn't. It's like you can't even hear.
What did you say?
I said I would love to see Lewandowski in Chicago. It won't happen. He more than likely will go to the Galaxy. Or I added to Sacha saying maybe LAFC. They don't have a 9.
Don't even bring it.
They would love to have a 9. Lewandowski and his wife want to do LA. That's how the conversation unfolded, Brad.
Well, I like to talk about things that would actually make sense. And Lacazette fits into that LAFC side, the way they want to play.
Let's put a pin in this until the summer, and we'll see who's right and who's wrong. And then come fall, we'll see who performs and who doesn't. Plus, we got to keep Taylor Twellman nice and safe. He has a game to call on Wednesday. All right. Well, that does it. You guys have fun?
That was good.
All right. For our very first showing of This is MLS, come back and join us every single week right here on the MLS Season Pass. Enjoy the games this week, everybody. We're going to.